Hey everyone, Wayne here. Today we're doing an overview and a quick review of the First Jihad, Rise of Islam, 632 to 750 AD, published by White Dog Games, designed by Madison and Wes Erni. This is a States of Siege style solitaire game. This is a little different than most of them, however, as instead of being the central part of the map and having everything coming in on the path towards you, you are actually representing the different groups, different entities, nations, religious groups, etc. on the outside, and you're actually trying to keep, in this case, Islam from pushing out from Mecca along these paths. I think it creates definitely a different type of gameplay, at least to a certain degree. I mean, it's going to be very familiar to most people. However, the way they have it set up, I really like it. And it does get, just by having that, you being more of on the paths as opposed to just in the middle. I think that's actually a good way to kind of put a little fresh blood into the system. So this hasn't been around quite a while. There's a lot of good games that do feature states of siege style. I like most of the ones I've played. Some of them are a lot simpler, just dice chucker. Some of them have a lot more strategy. I think the ones that you're seeing come out nowadays are starting to have more strategy, are more in depth, and are much more than just dice chuckers. And spoiler alert, this one is definitely lumped into that group of in-depth, a lot to do, a lot going on, and a much longer game as well, which I'll touch on later during my review part of the video. So let's start off with the overview. Here's the map. Obviously, this is the Middle East. Hopefully, you guys can see it pretty well. You can see where Mecca is, right here in the middle, basically where modern-day Saudi Arabia would be. Then you can see the different locations or boxes here, just like in most States of Siege style games. So you're looking at, Damascus. It's area movement here along these different paths. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of describe each of them. This is the Greek path. And you can see Damascus, Jerusalem. I'm not going to go through every single box, but Damascus, Jerusalem, etc. goes on to Constantinople, Greece, and then ends in Rome. You have the Mediterranean path, which goes through Alexandria, Libya, goes up all the way through, back up through Spain into France. There's the African path, which is only in the advanced game, and I'll touch on that later as well, the difference between the base game and the advanced game. There is the Indian path, which goes in the southern part of modern-day Iran, and then down to get to India, and then the Parthian path, which, the Parthian Empire up through, and then into China over here. And then also you have the Caucasus path, which goes up, obviously, as you can see, up through Armenia, up into kind of the middle of the steppes area of Eastern Europe, or Western Asia, I guess it would be. So during the base game, which is what I will be describing, and then also I'll be playing in another video, and then I'll be playing one turn during my overview here. In the base game, you're looking at things being a little more simplified, right? That's called the base game, not the advanced game. So what we're looking at is that you're going to have fewer paths. So see where I have these black cubes? These do not come with the game. That is, I put those on there. This shows that in the base game, you use these different paths, 4 paths, wherever you have the African path and the Caucasus path are shut off, and same with this city-state of Socotra. Pronunciation on some of these words is probably going to be off. I have never played a game quite like this in this area of the world, and so definitely there's a lot of new words, new locations to learn, and just bear with me if you are a student of history and you know how to pronounce them correctly. Bear with me. The intent is there. I really enjoy it. Let's just, get past that. So in this game, much like pretty much any States of Siege, you're going to draw a card. Once you draw that card, it's going to tell you what to do in the different areas, where Islam is going to try to advance and make hits. These hits are going to go along your paths. You're going to have to absorb the hits, whether you retreat your armies, you take hits on your armies, you use your castles, or these hits will be modified by your city-states. When you're looking at, say, the Bulgars up here, plus, you see how it says -1 hit, 0 hits, or +1 hit, or Cyprus here, -1 hit, 0 hit, -1 hit, etc. Tibetan Empire, -1, 0, and +1, -0, and -1, excuse me. Those are going to impact the hits on that path. Because if you look closely, for instance, with the Bulgars, it says affects the Greek path. Cyprus affects Greek or Med path, depending on how this is flipped. Tibetan Empire affects the Parthian path. So when you're tallying up your hits, you look at those different modifiers, whether it's, like I said, what you have going on with terrain, we have city-states, and then you can see how many hits you have to absorb and deal with. Turns go by, the years go by, there's changes in the rulers. So if you look over on the left side of the map here, you have your Byzantine Emperor and you have the Persian Shah. They have different leadership ratings, and then those, they don't determine your action points, which you have your action point markers down here in the bottom left. They're on the same path. But what they do is they allow you to see how many you're able to accrue in a turn. If you have a weaker leader, you're not going to be able to get as many in a turn. Also, if you can save them and how many you can save. Also, you have to have your capital still on the map, which obviously for the Byzantine Empire, the capital starts at Constantinople. It can be moved. And then the Persian capital for the Parthian Empire starts at Ctesiphon. Or Ctesiphon. All right. So what you're doing is each turn, like I said, you're drawing a card. It's telling you start with an Arab phase. It tells you where to assign the different hits. And we're gonna go through a whole turn, so you're gonna see how that works. After you go ahead and assign all those hits, you then go ahead and move on to the actions phase, which is where you spend your action points. Rallying armies, having naval battles, abstracted, obviously. Building your capital, moving the different tracks or attempting to move the different tracks of the city-states, and then engaging in battle and trying to push back the Islamic forces back towards Mecca. After that, there's a little end phase. You wrap up some of the things. What I wanted to mention for sure was that the Islam markers. So in this game, you have these Islam markers. The Islam markers represent the actual religion of Islam. So there's actually two things going on in the game. As your forces are pushed back along these paths, there's no army counters from Mecca or anything like that. There's no, it's very abstract in that sense. You're just being pushed back. However, as you get pushed back, what you're going to start seeing is you're going to start seeing Islam. So you're going to start seeing these lands converted to the Islam religion. So suddenly, as you're getting pushed back, well, your castle wouldn't move. That would end up being destroyed. But say your army's pushed back from Damascus, it may then get converted. And so now you're going to see Damascus is now Islamic. And that's going to it's going to make them more powerful when they generate hits, and it's going to hurt you when you're trying to attack them because it's going to make you weaker, basically, in the way the game handles combat. So, see, with Islam, I want to cover that. And I think that covers the basics of the game. That should give you a really good overview of the game. I'm going to go ahead and dive into a turn, show you guys a playthrough of a complete first turn. Hopefully that won't take too long. And then at the end, I'll do my final thoughts and do my review. All right, guys, let's go ahead and dive right in. I have the game all set up for a basic game. Again, I will go over some of the advanced stuff later at the end. However, after I'm done with this playthrough, I'm not going to play the advanced game right now. All right, so everything's all set up to go. You start off, after set up through the book, go ahead and you draw your first card. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up this first card. I'm going to go ahead and put it up on the screen for you guys so you guys can see it. Go ahead and take a look at that as I describe it. So the first card, and how you do the deck is some of the cards, the first and last in each era, and there's 4 different eras, are going to be already set up, and then the rest in between are randomized. So you're always going to get this one, Chained and Nailed by Fear, is your first card. If you go ahead and look at the card, you can see what you do. You look at the top left first, where it has a list of events. From top to bottom, you play each event. Now, see how the first one, Ecumenical Council, is in red? That means it's in the advanced game only, so we go ahead and ignore that in the basic game. So ignore that one. Now, underneath that, you're going to see Carabasian Theme. Now, in the Carabasian Theme, which will be played in the basic game because it's black, you see a triangle next to it. That means it will take effect in the action phase, which, if you remember, the game is broken up. There's an event phase, which is the card. There's the Arab phase, which is them doing their hits off the action rows, which you can also see on the card there. And then after that is the action phase, and then the end of turn phase. So we'll have to wait for the Carabasian theme. Carabasian theme, I'm sorry. Carabasian. All right, now look to the right of that. You'll see the action rows. Now, that rows is how the Arabs determine their hits, and then how many hits there's going to be. So looking at the rows, if you start off with the top left, you can see where there's a crown. That is the Greek path. That represents the Byzantine Empire. So from there, you will play them counterclockwise. You'll look so you can see, for instance, with this first card, there's 3 hits on the Greek path. Then you go to the left, bottom left, the blue, and continue counterclockwise. 0 hits on the Med path, 0 hits on the African path, although we're not using the African path in the base game. 1 hit on the Indian path, 1 hit on the Parthian path, and then 0 on the Caucasus. Although, again, we did not pay attention to the Caucasus one during the base game. All right. It has some fun flavor text, so I'm not going to go ahead and read it. I'm sure you guys have already been reading it while the card was up on the screen. So let's go ahead and take a look at the game and start playing. So, all right. So what we do, like I said, we do the events. We got to figure it out. We're going to wait to the action phase for that event. So let's go ahead and check the action rows. Top left, 3 hits on the Greek path. Now you can go ahead and look at the Greek path, is the purple path here. Greek path, we have a Byzantine army with a strength of 2 sitting in Damascus. Now, there's 2 hits to start with, or excuse me, 3. There's 3 hits, and now we need to figure out what modifiers there are to the hits. For instance, right now, coming out of Mecca, there's no modifier for Islam, no modifier that adds any hits. If Islam had been there, so which obviously wouldn't apply for Damascus, but say it was in Jerusalem and the Islam marker was already in Damascus and they were attacking Jerusalem, you'd get a +1 to the hits because it's already converted to Islam. We don't have to worry about that on the first turn. So Tacking Damascus, he starts off with 3, no modifiers for religion. We go ahead and we look at our city-states that may modify it. For instance, our Bulgar right now affects the Greek path, so it would affect them, but right now it's at 0 hits, which means no modifiers, not helping us, not hurting us. So that's good. Or it's better than taking more hits, right? Then you look at Cyprus. Right now, the Cyprus counter, it says Greek on it. You can see that. What that means is it's on -1, and it says Greek, which means on our Greek path, -1 to the number of hits that the Arabs will do to us. So our 3 becomes a 2. There are no other modifiers. You would look at terrain, which coming right out of Mecca, which all these paths are at the moment coming out of Mecca, there's no terrain differences, regular terrain. So it's now at a 2. Terrain, no modifiers. Looks like everything stays at a 2. So let's go ahead and inflict 2 hits on us. Now, there's a couple ways you can inflict hits. With this Byzantine army here, we could reduce him. Each reduction takes 1 hit. And what you would do is say we reduced him from his strong side to his weak side. That's 1 hit. We still have 1 hit to inflict. Well, at this point, maybe we would then say, okay, we want to shatter him, which the army can be reduced to a weak side, it can be shattered, and it can be cursed. The differences are, and that would be 3. So say if we had to absorb 3 hits, we could technically do that. But what that would mean is that this cursed army cannot rally this turn, and you would have to wait till the end of the turn phase for the curse marker to be removed, and then the next turn after that to rally him back. Or say we just weakened him and we put shattered on him, which that would satisfy 2 hits, right? 1 to weaken, 1 to shatter, and now he's a shattered army. Technically, when it comes to our action phase, we can go ahead and start spending our action points to first remove the shattered marker and then rally him to full strength. And you can rally and attack in the same turn. Obviously, each turn is representing years of time, so that's why you're able to do multiple things like that with an army. In this case, strategically, the best choice would likely be to simply retreat him. So you have possibly anyway, it's up to you though, right? So let's say this is what I'm going to do. So I have my Byzantine army in Damascus. He's taken 2 hits. I don't want to weaken the army at all. I want to leave him at max strength. So I'm going to go ahead and retreat him 1 land from Damascus to Jerusalem. That retreat absorbs 2 hits. Boom. We have taken care of our 2 hits. We are good on the Greek path. And now I know when it comes to the action phase, I can attack Damascus and hopefully retake it. You don't worry about the religion, converting to Islam, anything like that until the end phase. So at the moment, we're good, we're safe, everything's good here on the Greek path. So go ahead and look back to our card. Now we'll check the Mediterranean path. There are no hits. It's a 0. So we go ahead and just ignore that. Down, ignore Africa. Go over to the Indian path. Now there's going to be 1 hit against us over here. Go ahead and check. Tibetan is the Parthian path, so no modifiers. That place down here, the Socotra, that would be in the advanced game. That's why I have the black cube here. This is ignoring anything with the black cube. So go ahead and ignore those. So it's just the 1 hit, and it's going to be applied. Now in this case, rather than retreat, because remember, a retreat absorbs 2 hits, I would say we'd probably want to go ahead and just flip him over, have our army take the hit, go to its weak side. Now I don't have to retreat, and now I just stay in Khuzestan, so I don't have to worry about having to retack and retake it. So that absorbs the one hit on the Indian path. Now I'll go up to the Parthian path here, the black path. Now we look over at Tibetan Empire. It's on +0 right now, so no modifications to it. Let's go ahead and say, well, we have one hit as well. One hit, no modifications. Again, there's be one where you'd likely just want to absorb it. So you're looking, another thing to look at. So I'll move aside the Persian army counter. You can see this is the Persian capital. A capital starts off full strength. It can absorb a hit, which then it reduces to weak. And then if it takes another hit, it is eliminated. It can be rebuilt in your lands that have, I believe it's the same religion. You have to double check. Maybe it's on the path. I don't know. The point is it can be rebuilt. However, if you lose your capital, so say that we took more hits, later on down the line, you're going to take more hits. You will, trust me. And we got pushed back and we lost our capital. The Persians lost their capital. It doesn't mean the Persian Empire is done. What it means is you can no longer bank action points. And that's something we'll cover in the end phase, which is normally, say you had 1 point left in the east, 0 in the west, and in the Eastern Theater, which I should have explained that already. I'll explain that in a second. You could say keep that one action point if you had your capital on the map. If you don't have a capital on the map, you don't lose. You don't keep it. If you don't spend it, you lose it. All right. So one thing I should mention that reminded me. Sorry for not bringing this up earlier. The game is considered to be divided into two halves: the Western Theater and the Eastern Theater. The Western Theater is going to be, you're looking at your Greek and Med path. Eastern Theater, obviously, you're looking at Indian and Parthian paths. Now, you can see West action points, East action points. I totally forgot to mention this, so my apologies on that. But if you go back to the card, and I'll put it back up on the screen for you guys, is if you look at the card with the rows, in the middle, there's numbers 3 and 2. The number 3 here on the left side, that's going to be your Western action points. And then on the West is your Eastern action points, too. And that's where our action points would go. And we go ahead and put those on during the events phase. My apologies again for skipping that and jumping right into. I'm so excited to get to the Arab phase and start inflicting hits. All right, so those will be our action points that we're going to use later during our actions phase. Make sense? Okay, good. All right, so the hits, we're going to go ahead, literally, like I said, with just the one. We're just go ahead and flip him over. We're going to have him be weakened, but standing strong here. All right, that's it. So that is it for the Arab phase. They've inflicted all their hits. Now there are different things that can happen. Different cards can have different effects. Obviously, not only different events, which we'll cover here on our action phase, but also there can be, different numbers in here. If it's a number is red, for instance, and you're playing the basic game, so say that 3, where for the Greek path, it may be red, in which case you roll a 1d6 and you add that. And so you could get, well, that was only 1, thankfully, only 4 hits total. But what if you rolled it and you got, or you got a 6? Oh my God, you have 9 hits now coming your way. And that has happened to me, folks. It can happen and it will. All right. So let's see. All right. Arab phase is done. Going into the action phase. All right, cool. So action phase. Now this is where you go those action points where we have right now, we have 3 in the West, 2 in the East. You have to play them counterclockwise. Just basically go through, you play them on the Greek path, play them on the Mediterranean path, swoop around, Indian path, Parthian path. Now, you can only use the action points in the base game. You can only use the action points you have in that theater, in that theater. So, for instance, the 3 in the West now, you can only use on the West side. Then once we get over to the East, we only have 2 to use over there. So, we might, in every action, depends different amount of action points costs. It really depends. Attacks are usually 1. However, it can be more if you're crossing a river or if you're crossing crossing a sea, across the peninsula or whatever. So it does depend on that. However, you don't have to worry about mountains. The 2, you don't have to worry about mountains. 1 or 2 lines, you don't have to worry about it. It's when it's 3 lines you got to start worrying. So, for instance, right now, say we have our, let's start off on our turn. We have our 3 action points in the West. Let's go ahead and spend 1. We want this Byzantine army to attack Damascus. Now, what we're going to do, how you figure attacks, is you look at what the religion is you're attacking. Well, you look at the terrain, which terrain was it's just 1 line, so just 1 action point cost. Then we look at the actual color inside the land here. This color means it's a different religion. Our religion, which right now, Byzantine religion, is set to Orthodox Catholicism. So it would be this purple, purple, purple here. Well, this is not purple, clearly. So this will be a different, and it has the list of all the religions in the game. And religion is a big part of the game. Lesser the base game, more in the advanced game. Again, I'll cover that at the very end. But it's a big part. And so what that means is it's going to make it harder for us during our attack. How does it make it harder? It means we have to roll 2 dice instead of 1. And you'll see where that's not good for us. So what we want to do is we want to attack Damascus. Now, we have our Byzantine army. He's at a 2. That's pretty good. There's certain things now you can do to modify depending on what's going on, where you are. We have blessings up here, up top, if you look. Go ahead and show you these guys. So we have some Persian immortals with elephants. Then we have a Greek fleet, Dramans. Oops, there we go. There we go. +2 with the Persian immortals, +1 with the Greek fleet. You can go ahead, if you flip them over, you can see differences. For instance, Persian immortals now only have horses, +1. The Greek fleet has Greek fire, which makes it a +3. All right. What we could do in this attack is we could actually commit, I believe, let's see, it's on the Greek path, we should be able to use our Greek, we could use our Greek fleet to attack. And add +1. I think we can. Maybe Damascus we can't because it's more inland. All right, we're not going to do that, though, because I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to use it for that, just because I feel very confident that we can take this out. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to try to attack Damascus here. We spent our action point. We're committed to this battle. We have our 2d6. What we do, simple, go ahead and roll them. Now what we do is and here, we're in trouble. So what we do is you can see we got a 6 and a 1. And we go ahead and take away the highest die. When you're rolling 2, you take away the highest die, and whatever the lowest one left over is, that's your battle result. And what you need to do is you need to exceed the number on the front of your counter. Our Byzantine army has a 2 strength, which is normally really good, but we only rolled a 1. So we need a 3 or higher. We did not do it. Now, even if we had used the Greek fleet and had that +1, it would still only be a 2, so it wouldn't work. Now, there's no negative side effects to losing the battle. Thankfully, it's not like we get flipped over to a weak side or anything like that. We just basically wasted an action point. So what we want to do, I still want to take Damascus back. So we're going to go ahead and spend 1 more action point. We're going to attack again. Roll our 2 dice. 6 and a 4. Go ahead and take away the highest one, 6. And left with a 4. Well over the 2. We go ahead and we take over Damascus. Right now, Damascus had no religion in it, right? Or at least didn't have Islam, I should say. What would happen if Islam had already been there and we attacked it? It would have no modifiers for our combat, other than we definitely have to roll 2 dice, so because it's a different religion, clearly. We would attack, and once we took Damascus, the Islam marker would flip over to its disrupted side, which would have an effect on how it expands. And I'll cover the expansion here in a minute. But thankfully, we don't have to worry about that. There was no Islam anyway, and we took Damascus. All right, so we got 1 action point left. At this point, there's not a whole lot we can do with it, actually. So we're going to go ahead and... Actually, there is what we can do with it. So what we're going to do, and this allows me to teach you guys about the city-states, is say the Bulgars up here. Right now, they're at +0. Well, we want them to be -1. Because we want every turn when we take hits from the Arabs, we want to go ahead and take away those hits, right? We want to reduce the number of hits. Well, right now they're at 0. We want them at -1. Because they're docile, and on the counter, I know it's a little hard to see down there, but on the counter... they're listed as docile right now, which there's 1 AP, it says. These only cost 1 action point to move them over. If they were wild, which will happen thanks to events, it'd be 2 action points. All right. So go ahead and put them back. At their 1 action point. We'll go ahead and spend our 1 action point to move them over to -1 hit, which will help us in the future. And before I forget, I didn't cover it. I knew what it was as soon as I saw it, so that's why I kind of forgot to cover it. On the card, the Caribbean theme. What that does is, you look on let me show you guys how this works, is anytime there's an event, you have an event description card, which is a full card, front and back. Anything highlighted in yellow is in the advanced game. Those are the ones we ignore. And then the other ones are ones that will be in every game. So in this case, it was the Caribbean theme. So, all right. And here it is. Hopefully you guys can see it. There we go. This turn only, the Greek fleet may be committed any number of times without moving into the use box. Normal action point costs still apply. So what that would have meant was, say earlier when we wanted to use our Greek fleet, use it for an attack to assist us in attack. We call it amphibious landing. There's no modification for it. However, if you did the battle for Cyprus, Greek naval battle for Cyprus, or you did a coastal raid, which is a way to influence and disrupt the Islam marker, those things, if you had that, meaning then you could use it, the blessing, instead of putting it in the use box after one use, you just would never move it over. You would just keep it and you could just use it as much as you wanted, as long as you had the action points. Super simple stuff. That's why I, kind of forgot to mention it because I knew we weren't going to use it anyway. So, all right. All right, I think we're good over here in the west. Yep, used up all our action points. Now we go over the Eastern Theater. Go ahead and look at the Indian path here. Indian path and then the path. So we have 2 action points, huh? All right. Well, the obvious choice would be literally, it's pretty boring, but the obvious choice would be to spend 1 action point to rally this Persian army here, and then 1 action point to rally the Persian army there in the capital. All right, and that is all of our action points for our turn. Okay, fair enough. If we had extra action points, which we do not, we could move the Tibetan Empire marker over. Again, right now it just costs 2. Well, it does cost 2, I should say, instead of 1, because they're listed as badass. So the Tibetan marker, funny enough, it has 2 sides. It has the badass, which costs 2 action points to move it over, and then it has the Buddhist side, which only costs 1 action point. Right now, they're still pretty badass, so unfortunately, it would take 2. We don't have 2 to spend. I mean, I could have spent the 2 on that, but I decided to rally both my armies instead. That's just one of those choices you can make. And those are the type of choices you can make from game to game, turn to turn. Do you want to focus on rallying all your forces on a map right away? Do you want to always move the city-states over as fast as you can, as quick as you can, try to reduce those hits? That's entirely up to you. So that's the end of the actions phase now. Go ahead and go on to the end of turn phase. Starts off with a curse removal, which if you remember back to the beginning when I talked about curses on armies and how if you have curses you can't rally them away, so if they're shattered and cursed, you had to wait till this phase. Now that curse marker does get removed from the army. Now the conversion step. And here's where I'm just going to kind of show you, cheat a little bit to show you. So say our army had pushed back, say in India, our army had been pushed back to Seistan. So now Khuzestan and Yezd, I could even just do it to Yezd. So you say we got pushed back to Yezd, and now Khuzestan is open from Mecca. What we do on the conversion step is we go ahead, we take one of our dice, and what Mecca wants, what Islam wants, is it wants to convert Khuzestan to Islam, right? So what it does, you look in the bottom left of that land, you see that number 2? That's what it wants to roll, that or under. So go ahead and roll our 1d6. A 3, that's too bad. Now, say it was over in Damascus, over here. Say our army had been pushed back, and now we were in Jerusalem, and Damascus was open, and they rolled that same 3, wherever it was on the die. Rolled a 3, there we go. Boom. Guess what? Damascus is now Islamic. Now, what that means, like I said before, it adds hits on that path. It makes it harder, basically, for us to resist them, and it's really hard to convert them back. Now, is it possible? Technically, yes. What they call that is religious revival. So after we do our conversion step, which conversion step means you look for any open space that potentially you could convert into Islam. Khuzestan, 1. Oh, actually, there we go. So now they have a path. Now they have a Islam counter on the Indian path and 1 on the Greek path as well. Now, what you could do, say, down the road, so say we've been playing, we're halfway through the game, and I've been pushed back to Seistan and the Islamic markers at Yezd. Now, say I fight back, and remember, our armies, where our armies are and where Islam are 2 different tracks, 2 different ideas in the game. It's not, okay, I attack Yezd, pushes Islam back. That's not how it works. Say they've made it that far. I take Yezd, then I take Khuzestan back. Now, Islam is still this far. They're still past me down the path. However, 2 things happen. 1, me attacking would have disrupted Islam. So it would have reduced their effectiveness, absolutely, and then continued on. And they would not be able to recover because they're in my territory. It's considered my territory, anything farther along the path where my army is or farther along. Because they're disrupted, they're not going to be able to recover. And what I could do is every turn, say this was the end of this turn now, and we have this situation right here on the map. I would then roll. I would not convert anything because, again, they're disrupted, so they can't keep converting. They're in my territory. But what I could do is roll for religious revival, which, and it's difficult, you roll a 1d6, and if you happen to get a 6, nope, it did not, it would, if I got a 6 here, it would actually push the Islam marker back, saying that Yez, went back to its original religion. Religious revival, that's what that's called. So, pretty cool little function, pretty cool little feature. I really do like how that works. So, we'll talk about more at the end. All right, now you do the Islamic recovery step, which is, say this marker was disrupted, and say this one is disrupted. This one here in Damascus, because it's ahead of my army, right? There's a straight path from Mecca to it, and there's none of my armies are in the way. It's not my territory. It would be flipped over to Islam full strength. Here would remain disrupted because it's behind the lines, right? Behind my army. We check for a couple other things. Paris and the Berbers up here. We check for surrender step, which would be if one of my armies, and here I'll cover this quick, say this Persian army here got kicked back and was sitting on the Pratihara here. So you can see this is a different army. This is an Indian army. This is a Persian army. So I ended up on here, and I was unable to leave, whether I was attacking Seistan, but I couldn't take it over, whether maybe I ended up cursed. So then during my step, I had to wait till the end for them to remove the curse. Well, now that my army is sitting on Sind, my army then surrenders to the Pratihara army. And this part of the Persian Empire is done. Persian Empire is not done. The Parthian Empire, is not done. You would actually flip the marker over to divided, and then you would have the Indian track, still the Indian track, but with an actual Indian army. And at this point, we'd still have the Parthian, the Persian forces here. So that's how you can you get pushed back, you start losing armies. You don't lose them in battle in the traditional sense. You lose them that they end up on a neutral. That's what's called originally a neutral army. And then they get eliminated, they have to surrender to it. And then now this track is owned by this army. And then so on. This track only has the Persian army, and then it had this one. Up here you can see the Sogdian army, and then over here you have the Chinese army as well. So just different facets of that. Icon movement, that's just a little part of the game. You can see the icons up here. I'm not going to go deep into all this kind of stuff. I think this video's gone on long enough, frankly. You guys can get an idea of some of the in-depth stuff in the game. The banking step, remember, that would be if we had extra action points and we had our capital on the map, we could bank those action points. And then a blessings recovery. So say we use both our Greek fleet and we use our Persian immortals this turn. Those will just go ahead from the use box back over to the available box. Then the next turn begins. You go ahead, draw the next card. Is it God who commands you to murder, pillage, and destroy? And then go from there. It tells you what to do. Alright guys, that was the base game, and that was a good overview of how to run a turn, how the base game works. We'll talk a little bit about the advanced game now. In the advanced game, as you saw before with the event description card, it's just that it adds more events, right? There's going to be more events that happen. And then it's going to add more to the game. So looking down at the map here, you can see those paths that, as I ran through my turn, I ignored. I didn't have to worry about the African path. I didn't have to worry about the Caucasus path. Now, yes, on the first turn, they don't have any hits there, so it wouldn't matter anyway. But my point is, in the full game, you worry about those paths. You worry about Socotra. You worry about Sharia law. Like, you worry about those. That's on there too. That was another thing that you don't worry about in the base game. Now suddenly the whole map is open. You have to worry about everything that's going on. In the advanced game, religion plays a much more advanced part. Oh, that was a little bit of a pun I didn't mean to do there. So it does though, right? And just to show you what it adds a little bit. If you look at the front of the rulebook here, you can see the regular base game rules are pages 1 through 14. Well, the advanced game rules are 17 through 24. So basically, you're adding in 7 more pages of rules. You're adding 50% more rules to the game. You're going to go ahead and you're going to look at that advanced area, and it's going to add all kinds of stuff. And then it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even talk about the fact that during the game, in the base game, there's yellow. See the yellow? Highlighted yellow means that's stuff that's in the advanced game. Now, I'm trying not to shortchange the game here because the advanced game adds a lot to it. It adds a lot to the game. It makes it more complicated. It gives you more choices as well. You can do things like trading action points, certain bonus action points, religion. And here's maybe the key. Religion is a huge part of the advanced game. even bigger than it is here. Yes, you still get obviously Islam moving out. You're fighting it back. You get the experience, right, of that. In the advanced game, it's going to be more of balancing. Obviously, you saw say with these different charts here for Sharia law. You're going to deal with the Byzantine religion more of choosing their religion. Orthodox, Catholic, or monophasic. Like, you're going to do those things. You have to manage those things as well as the actual just armies on the paths, and taking hits and trying to capture lands back. So I know this gives you a little bit of idea that I did not go in depth in the advance. I'm sorry about that. I just don't want the video to go too much longer. And I just wanted to give you an overview so at least you understand that there's kind of the base game, which has a lot, and I'm going to cover that here in my final thoughts, my review. But then there's an advanced game as well. All right, guys, time for my final thoughts. So this is the part where I'm going to just give you my honest thoughts about the game, good and bad. So let's look at some good stuff here. Love the map. I love the way the map is done. Yes, it's simple in the fact you have the paths, you have the boxes for the lands, absolutely. But I like the subtle geography in the back when you really look and you can see where you are. It's not just completely abstracted. Like, you can actually see, look, Spain's over here, North Africa, the Middle East. I mean, you can see those things. I also love the fact that it's simple. So one of the comments I made on my overview of the Madison Civil War game, Jeff Davis, Confederacy of War, is the fact that the map is a little bit of a mess. It's just really busy. It's really busy in that game. This game, not the case. So love the map. Counters are really solid as well. Simple to read from a distance. I have a couple, and I've had a couple people mention this on my other video. I have a couple blurry counters. They will replace that free of charge. You just tell White Dog Games, let them know, and they'll go ahead and replace them blurry. But if you want to look at because if you compare some of the blurry ones to, say here, hopefully you guys can see that. Hang on, let me get it all set up for you. All right, you can see the Byzantine religion. It's a little blurry. Just the printing is. They replace that for free. They'll send you a new counter sheet, no problem. I just haven't gotten mine yet. But otherwise, if you look at the other ones that are printed correctly, they're totally fine. They look really nice, actually. Super easy to read from a distance, which honestly the map's not that big, so it's not as big of a deal anyway, but it's still nice. Okay, so that's kind of the aesthetics, right? Kind of the components. Components are good, solid, ranked from solid to really good, basically. No problems there. Cards are nice as well. Let me mention the cards quick. Again, really easy to read. Whoever did the layout of everything did a really good job. Simple, good quality in cards, but super easy to read. I love the fact that it's got, the name here on the top, the big name, the events. The action rows is super easy to follow and use, and then it has some fun flavor text at the bottom you can read with every card, especially because I'll be honest, this is not something that I know. I do not know, the Jihad Wars, the Rise of Islam, 632 to 750 AD. This is not part of history that I've ever had a great interest in, but, and this is where I keep talking about more of the game here in general, I do love the history in this game. There's some good stuff, there's some bad stuff, but learning the history is fascinating, which that applies anywhere, right? It applies to the Civil War as well. A lot of bad stuff happened, but it's still fascinating learning the history, learning the lessons from it. And this is a really good one for that. I feel like I'm learning about this conflict and this part of history, of world history, that I never really learned, focusing on Western culture and Western history. So now to get to the gameplay itself. Gameplay itself is super easy. It does take a couple turns to get the hang of how it works, but once you do, you're going to be knocking out turns really fast. However, and this is where we get into the less great things, there are a lot of turns. The game is pretty long. So the full game should be, I believe, a total of 50 turns. So what does that mean? You say, well, that doesn't sound so bad. They go by pretty quick. Yeah, they do go by pretty quick. But think about this. I had my stopwatch out. Well, I used my phone. Okay, use my phone. And for a few turns I played, and what I did was I would stopwatch them, and it was taking about 10 minutes a turn. Well, 10 minutes a turn, 50 turns, 500-minute game. Yeah, that's not a short game. Now, they don't claim to be a short game. I believe if you look on the box, I'm trying to look without wrecking it. I got stuff in the box. My apologies. What does it say? 45 to 90 minutes. Okay, that's not true. So, but then again, if you look at BGG and you read Wes Erni, he has some, which is one of the co-designers, he has some great information, like designer notes that didn't fit in the rulebook because the rulebook's already long enough. Up on BGG, I suggest you check that out for sure. Just go to the First Jihad's BGG page. Anyway, he has a lot of good stuff covering it, and he goes in and basically points out that it's like, yeah, okay, that 45 to 90 minutes, that's not real. What it makes me think of is Jeff Davis. Again, if you watched that video, if you played that game yourself, whatever, I've covered it enough. But it is a longer game, much longer than a lot of Stages of Siege. So I think some people look at a Stages of Siege game and think, well, it's going to be quick and easy. And some of them are. This is not. This will take you hours and hours. Now, the good thing is, so it's a little bit of a negative, right? I guess what I'll say, let me lump the rest of the kind of negative in with that, is I think that's maybe a little too long. Maybe. What I mean by that is it doesn't outlive its welcome. I don't want to say that, but it definitely gets to the point where you're like, man, this is a long game. Now, on the easy part or the nice part, the way it plays, draw a card, run through some stuff, you're done for that turn. You can be done and walk away, and you can come back, because then what do you do when you come back? You don't have to reimagine where you are. You just look at the map. Okay, not too complicated. Here's where my armies are. Here's where Islam is. Draw another card, play through it, read it, do the events, do the action rows, do your actions. Done. Super simple, and it's easy to pick up and play is what I'm saying. So even though it is a longer game, you're not going to have that. At least I never had that, because trust me, I did not finish my first game in 8 hours of just sitting there playing. I don't usually play really any game like that. I'm more the type to sit and play for an hour, go do something else, come back and play another hour. So hopefully if that, that just so you're aware of that, right? That is not a short game. Now for the actual gameplay, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of interesting stuff. The action rows is super cool. Love the action rows design. Love being able to, kind of see those hits on each path. And then because each path has those hits from that action rows, and then you have those modifiers, right? You're looking at terrain. You're looking at the city states. Do they help you or do they hurt you? You look at what you're doing. And there's other things I didn't even touch on, like castles, right? Castles absorb hits. So say you have this castle here, in Jerusalem, has a 3 next to it, that absorbs 3 hits. So our guy could retreat here, because sometimes you'll get a case where you have to take 5 hits. 5 hits. Here's what you could do. You could retreat 2, and then you're on top of this castle. You can retreat under him. That absorbs 3 hits. Now you're in this castle. Now when you go to fight on your turn, assuming you're still there, you have to fight outside of the castle. So you don't just go straight from under this castle to Damascus. You have to fight to retake Jerusalem. Then you go back outside the castle. Then you can attack Jerusalem and try to take that. Or excuse me, Damascus. Really cool little fun thing, like kind of semi-realistic, right? Like you're hiding in the castle, so you have to fight your way and take over the countryside. All right, I'm blanking for a second. I was trying to think of anything else I want to really cover with you guys. Yeah, so that's the First Jihad. Overall, I really enjoy it. It is a long game, and I do struggle with the length of it at times. The saving grace for me with the length is that I can stop playing, walk away, go to sleep, go to work, come home, and I can pick it up, flip a card over, and just play some more. That's what's a saving grace for me. I don't need to sweat the details of, wait, what happened last turn? Which guys do I have to move? Just play through a turn, because each turn's only going to take 10 minutes. It's just that there's going to be, 40, 50 turns in a game. The reason I say it like that is there's actually technically less turns in the base game. The advanced game is the full 50. With the base game, you actually take out some of the cards. So it's not even a full 50 turns. I think it's closer to like 40. So there's not a whole lot of other negatives to talk about. Those are the negatives. The positives, a whole bunch of positives. Great job, you guys. I think great job. White Dog Games publishing these solitaire games. Killing it. White Dog Games is on fire right now as far as I'm concerned. Killing it with a lot of great games. Ben Madison and Wes Erni. I combined your guys' names. My apologies. Both of you guys are doing great jobs here. Keep it up. Go ahead, and if you have time, you're interested in this game, check it out. Also, go read Wes Erni's stuff on Board Game Geek, talking about the game and talking about some of the designer notes and things like that. So, hope you guys liked the video. Hope you guys liked my review. Give me some comments below. Let me know what you think about the game. Tell me what I missed. People do that, and I don't care. I love it. Tell me what I missed. Tell me what I forgot. Tell me what I said wrong. Hopefully, though, you get a good idea what the game is like, fairly accurate view, and hopefully you're interested in it, because I think it's a really good game, and it's really one of those games that you learn from as well. So, all right, till next time, guys. Later.